Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Come on.
Hey, now. Break it down, build it up. We got way more than enough. Break it down, build it up. Cause my people know what's up. Break it down, build it up. We got way more than enough. Break it down, build it up. My people know what's up.
Got so much, like an overflowing cup. We are beautiful, powerful, waterfall of love, and I'm basking in all of your magic, and I'm asking what you wanna make happen. Peace is the North Star, chilling in the backyard. You don't have an act hard, everybody down. You might have to get at me, cause spirit get ahead of me. Got me feeling freedom in the room right now.
Break it down, build it up. We got way more than enough. Break it down, build it up. Cause my people know what's up. What's up? What's up with humanity? Always in love and ready to give. That is the reality, though some will think it ain't to be now.
If I told you that I love you right now, would you turn around and tell me pipe down? Would you trust me or just cut me right down? Treat me justly, would you take the high ground? Stick around and just set your pride down? In this country, up to me, I'm Mike Brown. Peace poets on a mission, we can never put the mic down. Oye, mi gente, no human is illegal. Black lives matter, all power to the people.
Break it down, build it up. We got way more than enough. Break it down, build it up. Cause my people know what's up. Break it down, build it up. We got way more than enough. Break it down, build it up. Cause my people know what's up.
Oh, what's up?
Prophetic resilience is what wakes up the conscience. And you've got it deep inside. You just listen up and let it fly. Break it down,
Yeah.
we got way more than enough. Break it down, build it up. My people know what's up. Break it down, build it up. We got way more than enough. Break it down, build it up. My people know what's up.
We are the movement, liberation movement for every single human. We have come to win. We are the movement, liberation movement for every single human. We have come to win. We are the movement, liberation movement for every single human. We have come to win. We are the movement, liberation
for every single
movement
human.
for every single human.
We have come to win.
We have come to win. We are the movement,
Liberation movement
liberation movement
for every single
for
human.
every single human.
We have come to
We
win.
have come to win.
We are the movement.
We are the movement,
Liberation movement
liberation
for
movement
every single human.
for every single human.
We have come to
We
win.
have come to win.
That's why we sing.
We are the movement,
Sing it now
liberation movement
from your soul.
for every single human. We have come to win.
For all our people, let's raise our voice.
We are the movement, liberation movement for every single human. We have come to
Sing
win.
it from your soul.
We are the movement,
Like you read it.
liberation
Like we
movement
need it.
for every single human.
Like we
We
cannot
have
do.
come to win.
That's why we sing.
We are the movement,
Move with it.
liberation
Dance
movement
with it now.
for every single human. We have come
Put
to
those
win. We are the movement.
The people in your neighborhood.
Liberation movement.
The people in your town.
Every single
From coast to
human.
coast.
We
We have
have
lost our
come
fear.
to
We come to win.
We are the movement. Liberation movement. For every single human. We have come to win. We are the movement. Liberation movement. For every single human. We have come to win. We 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 come to win.
Caminando means walking, and we're walking towards the sun, we're walking towards freedom, is this refrain. It's a zipper song. So in a zipper song, in organizing, is a song that you leave the same refrain and then you zip in the operative word. The word that you're going to use that keeps the song going but changes. That's the only word that changes. This Little Light of Mine is a zipper song. We Shall Overcome is a zipper song. These are songs that are wonderful to use in our gatherings because they're easy to learn, they're very repeatable, and you just continue shifting the main word you're working on. So let's go with it. Caminando, caminando, vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando, vamos caminando hacia la libertad. A mí me gusta cantar, a mí me gusta caminar, a mí me gusta cantar. I like to sing, I like to walk, I like to sing that this road, we make it as we walk. There are no recipes. Que el camino lo vas haciendo al caminar. Caminando, caminando. Vamos. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando a la unidad. Vamos caminando hacia la unidad. Mano a mano, caminando, hombro a hombro, trabajando y las tierras compartiendo. Hand in hand, we're walking, shoulder to shoulder, we are working. And by sharing the land, we harvest freedom. Libertades cosechando. Vamos. Caminando, caminando. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Hey. Caminando, caminando. Vamos caminando hacia la verdad. Verdad is truth. And the truth is that the opposite of freedom is not necessarily jail. That's why many of us have risked freedom, have risked jail, have risked our wallets, our reputations, our very lives for the freedom of others or for our own very own freedom. But the opposite of freedom is something like malnutrition, where the body starts eating itself from inside, domestic violence, police brutality, all these abuses of our freedom lock us. Ya no más desnutrición, queremos liberación. No al egoísmo, no a la guerra. No more malnutrition. What we want is liberation. No more selfishness and war, so we can live life to the fullest. Pa vivir la vida plena, pa vivir la vida plena. Vamos, caminando, caminando. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Together now. Caminando, caminando. Vamos caminando hacia la paz. Towards peace. No hay camino ya hecho, pero hay brecha preparada. Nuestros mártires la abrieron. There is no recipes, but there are little pathways that have been opened by those who've come before us, those on whose shoulders we stand, our ancestors, our martyrs, those who have taught us the way. And how have they done it? Caminando, caminando, caminando. La jornada.
Welcome back, Ignatian Family. Before we turn things over to Crystal and Alyssa to introduce our next speaker, we wanted you to learn a little bit more about a couple of our sponsors helping to make the Teach-In possible. Let's hear from Sojourners and Jesuit Refugee Service USA.
My God believes that I am beloved.
My God is not a Republican or a Democrat.
She breaks through stained glass ceilings and brings down walls.
My God is not afraid to call out racism.
My God heals without worrying about insurance.
My God was a refugee.
Was an immigrant.
And wasn't white.
My God is with the lonely.
Doesn't care about my tattoos.
And doesn't care if I'm 23
or 63.
My God commanded us to care for this earth.
A mi Dios no le importa si no hablo inglés.
My God is love.
Is love.
Is love.
Is love.
Is love.
Is love.
Es amor.
Is love.
Is love.
Is love.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Francisco. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you to our first breakout presenters and our keynote. We invite the rest of you to continue the IFTJ tradition of roll call by continuing to shout out all of your delegations represented here at the IFTJ.
And many thanks to Francisco Herrera and the Peace Poets who have provided the music for this weekend. Our artist in residence, Francisco Herrera, is a cultural worker, a theologian, and a singer-songwriter. Throughout the history of the Teach-In, Francisco has helped us to unite in song, especially singing Caminando together, and we are so excited to have his music with us again this weekend. This year, he's joined by the Peace Poets. The Peace Poets have worked with racial justice, immigration rights, indigenous, and environmental justice groups to develop music as a part of their political practice. This is the Peace Poets' third year being part of the IFTJ, and we are thrilled to have them back. Their music is awesome, so please be sure to tune in early. Be sure to join a few minutes early to hear their music.
And again, we want you to continue to share your photos and videos on social media to celebrate your participation here in the first ever virtual Teach-In for Justice. So remember to use the hashtag IFTJ on your social media posts or submit your photos directly to us at igsol.net/photos. Next, I would like to turn it over to Lisbeth Vidal, our Ignatian Network speaker. Very excited for listeners.
It's virtual. It's coming soon.
Yeah.
My name is Lisbeth Vidal, and I'm a 17-year-old Latina from Chicago who is fighting with this question. Now, you may be wondering, why are we talking about power during a time when our country is at the low state in many ways? Who has power over us? What is good and bad power? As people of faith, we should avoid all power and be peaceful. But that's not exactly what Jesus did. Also, some of you may have heard the phrase, if you want peace, work for justice. To understand how I began to work for power and justice, let's take a trip through my life. Growing up, the saying I remember is que solamente sigue las reglas, no las rompas, which translates, always follow the rules, don't break them. As a sexual abuse survivor, I'm told to be quiet. I'm told to not say anything because no one's going to believe what I have to say. Fear grew on me, and I let the passive mindset define my decisions. I'm not going to be a target for society. I'm going to be a leader for my future generation. I'm going to fight these battles because Jesus taught me to be brave, compassionate, so I can shake up the system. Living in the south side of Chicago, I have encountered so many injustices. Shootings, looting, police brutality, racism, lack of resources, and the list goes on. I came to the realization that the system has failed us. We always tell the youth, you're a kid, be quiet. We have shut down their power, but you don't see these youth that are being called kids have so much potential. My personal trauma caused me to forget about my power. Power is a gift we all received when we were born. Funny thing, nobody taught us to be leaders of tomorrow, which is normal. I never expected to be an activist. It never crossed my mind. Why, you may ask? Well, I thought I didn't have the potential to make a change. And let me tell you, I was wrong. I do have the power to bring the change into my neighborhood, my city. I started as a shy girl, but once I met my mentors from ITP, they encouraged me to reach out to the stars. Now, I'm capable of organizing events, speaking at press conference, canvassing, and phone banking. It's clear that the youth can make a change. Our voices are the future. We build the neighborhood. Increase the Peace, ITP, is an organization that has been practicing nonviolence in our neighborhoods. Youth leaders have organized school supplies giveaways, voter registration, and food pantries. We don't get paid to do this work, but we want to motivate participation in the community. Everyone brings a different talent to the table, and that's what makes us more united. In these moments, we need our youth to speak up about the issues we face. Here's a question. What has our politics done for us? I can for sure tell you they haven't done much. We have ignored our local elections because the bigger positions have more of an impact. Elected officials make many decisions about the funds that immediately affect our communities. The issue that I have is that these elected officials don't help communities like mine. If they are to be in office, their only job is to work for us, not us to them. It's important that we inform ourselves. With the presidential elections around the corner, our job is to encourage our people to vote. Being an activist isn't easy, of course. It's easy to talk big, and people will tell you, what's the point? That's a waste of time. Look for a job. It's funny because this is my job. I need to educate my people. I'm tired of these labels of racial and socioeconomic labels. Don't get me wrong. I'm proud of being a Latina, but I don't want to have any limits because I know I have power too. Nuestras acciones hablan más fuerte que nuestras palabras, which translate, our actions speak louder than our words. This is so true. Our elected officials are elected to lead. They always say, I want to be in office to help people. But sometimes we don't see any action. As an activist, we see frustration, but we also are asking for tangible results. When we meet other like-minded people, we achieve certain goals. For legislation, even though we have our differences, we are more united. We are the pueblo unido that never will be vencido or conquer. It's not about fame, but it's what you bring to the table and the way you build up your neighborhood.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your bravery and truth and boldness in speaking out against injustice. Truly an activist. We will now hear from our keynote speaker, Olga Segura. Olga is a freelance writer and the opinion editor at National Catholic Reporter. Previously, she was an associate editor at America Media, where she wrote and solicited articles on race and culture. She's a co-founder and former co-host of the podcast Jesuitical, and her writing has appeared in The Guardian, Shondaland, Sojourners, Refinery 29, and The Revealer. Really awesome articles. She completed her first book, Birth of a Movement, Black Lives Matter in the Catholic Church, which will be published in spring 2021 by Orbis Books. It's now my pleasure to welcome Olga.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Crystal, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to everyone who is tuning in to listen to me speak on this random pandemic October. And thank you to Kelly, Chris, and the rest of the Ignatian Solidarity Network family for inviting me to be a speaker this year. I still remember the very first time I got to attend the teach-in while working for America Media. And it just completely blew me away because I wasn't involved in any kind of ministry or youth group in high school or college. So my first time attending the teach-in was the first time that I got to see the energy, passion, and brilliance that so many young people from all across the country bring together and brought together at the time. And I still remember the very first time I heard Francisco's Caminando. So I'm absolutely honored to be able to talk to everyone today and to be in community with you all today. Because at this moment in our nation's history, we've been dealing with so much. We're currently dealing with so much. And 2020 has been an extremely tragic and difficult year for so many people. For me, I'm in New York City. I live in the Bronx. And this year was the first time since the terrorist attacks of September 11th in 2001, when I was in the 7th grade. This was the first time that I really saw the city that raised me, one that was always noisy, crowded, alert, just filled with people. This is the first time that I saw it just shut down. And obviously this happened because of the global pandemic. The first COVID case we saw in the United States was confirmed in January. And since then, more than 224,000 Americans have died during the COVID-19 global pandemic. And in my hometown alone, more than 30,000 people have lost their lives since the first case was detected. And these are men and women like Ana Ortiz, Jacob Creedwell, Shaimik Frazier, and Pedro Flores, men and women who have left behind families, legacies, loved ones, friends, etc. And along with dealing with the disproportionate effects that this global pandemic was having on communities like mine, we were also dealing with this rising violence that we've been seeing at the hands of armed police officers or armed white vigilantes. And by this summer, we saw that anti-police protests had erupted all across the United States following the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. So we had what a lot of people have described as these two twin crises that were happening in our nation in 2020. And women and men from communities like mine and other marginalized communities have lost health insurance, jobs, savings, and their homes. And time again this year, we have seen the ways that these communities continue to be systemically oppressed by various systems in the United States. And like many people from my community and from other communities, Black, Indigenous, POC communities, this year has left many of us feeling extremely exhausted, extremely afraid, and more often than not, really struggling to find any kind of hope amid so much tragedy. And amid all of this, on a personal level, I was working on a book on the Black Lives Matter movement. And this was a movement that I had been reporting on since 2014. I was at American Media and I was an editor. And when I started reporting on this movement, I was at a point in my life where I was really trying to figure out my place in the world. I was in my mid-20s. It was 3 or 4 years since I graduated college in 2011. And I wasn't really sure what my faith life was going to look like. I wasn't even sure whether or not I wanted to be a writer, which it seems a little insane for me to look back at that and to think that I ever had any kind of doubts about it. But I was really struggling with these questions about my own identity, my own vocation, and the role that my faith would play in both of those things. So I began writing about the movement, and I was seeing how people were engaging with the Black Lives Matter hashtag, and I was seeing the types of conversation that people were having. And I saw that people were using this hashtag at the time. This was back in 2014, 2015, or 2014, excuse me. People were really using, before Ferguson, people were really using this hashtag to share information about protests that were happening or to have conversations about issues like abolition, organizing, police brutality. And for me, I came across some protests that were happening in New York City, and I decided to attend and just kind of see the conversations that people were having, what these organizers were saying at these marches, what they were really fighting for. We knew that people were trying to raise attention to the violence that we were seeing happening at the hands of police officers, but I wanted to get a sort of on the ground perspective of why so many people were being moved by this phrase to get together and to be in community with one another. And after attending a couple of marches in 2014 and 2015, I wanted to familiarize myself more with the movement. And this was especially easier to do because after this Ferguson uprising in the summer of 2014, the movement really was blasted into the American conscientiousness. And I began to learn that it was this movement founded by 3 Black women, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi. And these were women who had been organizing individually before their work with the Black Lives Matter movement for more than 10 years. And they started this movement as an online social media campaign following the acquittal of George Zimmerman and the shooting death of Trayvon Martin in 2013. But following that summer in Ferguson, where more than 400 organizers from all across the United States traveled to Ferguson to support organizers who were rallying together following the shooting death of Michael Brown Jr. that summer. And following Ferguson, activists returned to their respective cities and started their own local Black Lives Matter chapters using the resources and the knowledge that so many of them had gathered that summer. And 7 years later, the movement has grown to include chapters all across the country. We see that they have resources on restorative justice, conflict resolution, and on how to organize. And it is a movement that's really, really committed to things that we as Catholics are also thinking about. The movement is really focused on inclusion, affirming the experiences of Black, queer, and trans women and men, and working toward a world where all Black people are liberated and free, and by extension, all people. So when I first began reporting on this movement, as I mentioned earlier, I was in my 20s and really trying to figure out not just what role I would play as a writer, as an editor, what it meant to be Catholic. I was also using this movement and using my faith to answer a lot of the identity questions at the time, that a lot of the identity questions that I was having at the time. So I was wondering, was I Afro-Latinx? Was I Black? What did all of those labels mean? And what role was my faith going to play in all of these things? And reporting on this movement really helped me to begin to do the work to understand how I wanted to identify, understand how I wanted to move as a Catholic editor, as a writer. And it really, most importantly, really helped me to understand that even though I am from a marginalized community, even though I identify as a Black Catholic immigrant, I'm still someone who moves through the world with privilege because of my light skin. And what did it mean to be Catholic and to understand that and to move through the world in that way? And so in 2020, I have been extremely inspired to see how many people are engaging with this movement and how many Catholics in particular are really focused on trying to grapple with what this movement truly is. Because for me, this movement is one of the most pro-life movements that this country has ever seen. The founders have not just created an organization committed to fighting for Black life and dignity, but they're also focused on encouraging organizers, especially young organizers, to build a community, work in solidarity with one another, and work to provide alternatives to policing and more broadly the prison industrial complex. And it is a movement that, very much like our faith, challenges individuals to really step outside of their own experience, to really think about what it means to shift the power and the resources that we have to the most marginalized in our communities. And for me, it really challenged me to step outside of my own comfortable lived experiences and to begin to think about what it means to truly go to the margins, right? We have heard Pope Francis talk about going to the margins throughout his entire papacy. But this movement really helped me to think about that more deeply and also to apply a critical lens to our church as well, because I learned how to sit with church history. I learned how to use a critical eye to analyze what the church has done, how it has been complicit in the very oppressive systems that we're seeing in 2020. And we know that throughout its history, the church has been complicit in chattel slavery. We know that religious orders have owned enslaved persons. We know that schools, Catholic schools, were segregated in the 20th century. We know that in 2020 alone, we continue to see white faith leaders who are really struggling to understand what racial justice efforts are truly in 2020. And amid so many different tragedies, so many different things that are going on in 2020, I was not only learning about this movement that I had been engaging with for so many years, but it was also introducing me to new ways of being Catholic amid a time when we are not in community with each other, right? Because I thought, as I was writing the book, I was really focused on how are we going to think about this movement? How are we going to push our church leaders to be better? How are we going to get people to fully internalize the idea that Black lives truly matter? But one thing that I did not expect to happen was that this movement helped me to think about the ways that I can be in community when I'm not physically next to someone, right? We have been socially distanced amid a global pandemic, and I have asked myself, what does it mean to be in community with Catholics? What does it mean to be in community with all of my Catholic brothers and sisters, people from other marginalized communities like mine? What does it mean to be in community with each other when all we might have available are Zoom, when all we might have available are cell phones and things like that? And it really helped me. 2020 helped me to realize that I think for a long time when I got this book deal, so I had been reporting on this movement since 2014, and then I was offered a book deal in 2019. And I was 29 at the time and very egotistical and very much thought, okay, so I have been reporting on this movement for so long and I know everything that I can about this movement. I know how I should be challenged as a Catholic. I know how to present this to Catholics. And I was very much operating from an egotistical Catholic perspective. And 2020 really, again, challenged me to think about what it means to internalize this idea that this movement is committed to human life and human dignity. What does it mean to be in solidarity with each other? What does it mean to want to push your church and your country forward toward a better place? What does it mean to do that when we can't see each other, right? And the book really helped me to think about how to continue to use the resources that I have to really push myself and our church forward. And at a time in 2020 when we are seeing in particular the ways in which the journalism industry can be manipulated, for example, sitting with this movement, sitting with reporting, and sitting with my own book that I completed this past summer really helped me to realize that it's not enough to just write about this. It's not enough to just speak about this, even though I love having the opportunity to be in community with other people and to talk about this movement. But it's not enough to just do that, right? I like to talk. One thing that that 2020 has really helped me to understand as a Catholic, the type of work that I have to do is I have to shift resources and I have to shift my own power and give people the space to do that, right? When I started reporting on the Black Lives Matter movement, I was at a Jesuit publication that really, really empowered me to understand that journalism was a way to talk about God's people. Journalism was a way to talk about racial justice. Journalism was a way to center and uplift the people who are most silenced in our society. And in 2020 alone, I have used those principles to not just apply to all aspects of my life, but I'm using them to continue to challenge myself as a writer, to continue to challenge myself as an editor, because I really believe that writing is one of the most powerful tools that marginalized communities have in this country and in this world, because it's a way to really help people to step into our lived experiences. It's an opportunity to tell our stories our way. And I, in 2020, am really committed to giving people that space, to giving people the opportunity to tell their stories and to talk about what it means to be Catholic. What does it mean to be a Black immigrant and be Catholic? What does it mean to be Indigenous and Catholic? And one of the ways that I have internalized this movement is by really thinking about the ways that I can every day step outside of myself and give power to people who might not have it. And that is something that being able to sit with this movement, with the principles of this movement, and to think about the ways that it overlaps with our faith, and being able to just write a book in the middle of so much tragedy in this country, it's really made me realize that, yes, it is okay to feel exhausted. It is okay to be tired. It is okay to not know what to do. It's okay. All of those things are okay, but we have to continue to remind ourselves that we have to keep pushing forward. We have to keep centering people who don't have whatever, and this is relative, right? Whatever privilege you might have. 2020 is really, really a call to step outside of ourselves and to step outside of the power that we all have, and to think about how we can shift that over. And I hope that Catholics who are engaging with my work, who are engaging with my book that's coming out next year, I really hope that they can learn from my journey and learn that this is not just a movement that is super removed from what we know about our faith. This is a movement that can help us be better Catholics. This is a movement that can really help us to center ourselves and really fight for communities that continue to be devastated by systemic oppression in the United States. And I think that it is a movement. I believe that it is a movement that, like Jesus, like Pope Francis, actively and consistently challenges us to step outside of ourselves and to really, really fight and continue fighting, even if what we're fighting for we might never see. As Catholics, we have a role to play in this movement. And I am so excited that you guys came in today to listen to me, and I will be talking more about the ways that Catholics can do this in my breakout session. But thank you so much for tuning in. And if you want to learn more about my own faith and how to continue to do this work, you guys can pre-order my book, Birth of a Movement, Black Lives Matter and the Catholic Church. So thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Olga, for being with us and for sharing with us. We're really grateful to have you this year at the Teach-In. So thank you. To everyone else, here we are, IFTJ 2020. We are moving along. So be sure to join one of our 4 live stream breakout sessions that are going to start in about 20-25 minutes. So you can click the schedule button on the home screen of your app to see the upcoming sessions, or we're going to drop a bunch of the links in the chat box. So next, we're going to close with a song from the members of the Peace Poets. Thank you so much.
Peace, students of the Ignatian Teach-In. This is Lubin from the Peace Poets, and I want to share with you a poem called Everything is Possible. I like to think that everything is possible, that nothing is an obstacle, that everything is optical and optimism's optimal, because pessimism never lets you listen to the God in you. Possibility is so strange and seems so odd to you when the machina done got to you. Centering all their visions on the television, opting you to listen to your insecurities while their modules
placing all that sickness and disease up inside of you. But it's never to provide for you. It's always just about you consuming all the products. Who really gets the benefit? Who really gets the sense of it? Let's really get a sense of it and feel it in your body, son. You are full of love and light. Spit that truth. Embody, son. Because cynicism consuming all the human in them. We stay a prison reflecting all the lumens in them. Aimed at a system that has us down on our luck. But we're in love with our people. And that's word to this luminous flux. This ain't a mic. This the way you amplify light. So we can see our own reflections in the words that you write. And this ain't a pen. This the way you channel your zen and meditate upon the days that you were blessed to have been. And this ain't a rap. It's a prayer call to the fact that we're bigger than our fears and their societal traps. On top of that, the world is waiting for you in this hour to realize what you are worth and quickly step into your power. It's not just about your past. We need you more than ever to forgive all of the parts of you thought were broke and weathered, to give some of that heart that you might think just won't belong because you're too focused on your flaws and everything that you've done wrong. But we need your song. Just look around to this page full of people. It's a celebration. Bunch of spirits bathed in starlight on a quest for liberation. Ancestors in your sister, see them in your brother's eyes. New dawn of day upon us, and all we have to do is rise. And the divine gave it his breath to speak and call your truth to power. In the face of all injustice and the darkness that devours, in the face of crooked cops and the violence that's systemic, it's our fate to sing our song upon this silence epidemic. And you ain't alone. Let's take this time to welcome you home to a movement born of movements within a dance of our own. B-boying through revolution, B-girling through liberation, up-rocking to the solution, pop-locking through occupation. Family, have you ever had a dream before? And don't mistake it for impossible, just because it's something you ain't seen before. Peace.